Camilla Parker Bowles now finds herself ensnared in an escalating conflict that she almost certainly did not anticipate. While you and I have watched endless cycles of royal theater over the years, this situation represents a profound departure from the usual headlines. This is no mere storm over leaked texts or tabloid gossip. Instead, two influential members of the royal household have quietly and systematically decided to settle a 30-year grievance. To understand this drama, we must look at the history, because the origin of this dispute is paramount. The public knows the simplified version: Diana as the tragic wife, Camilla as the rival, and Charles caught between them, but that brief outline ignores the crucial details explaining today's events. The tragic death of Diana in Paris in August of 1997, at the age of 36, shocked the world, though her marriage had been over long before that fateful night. The shadow of the woman she labeled as the third person in their relationship did not fade. Instead, Camilla remained a quiet presence in Charles' life, marrying him in 2005. By May of 2023, she walked into Westminster Abbey to be crowned, wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, the favorite heirloom of Queen Elizabeth. This grand coronation was meant to signal the ultimate rehabilitation of Camilla, a neat ending to a messy history. Yet, beneath the ceremony, a different reality was brewing. For Princess Anne, the narrative was far from resolved. Having served as a working royal for more than 70 years, she witnessed every single chapter of this family tragedy unfold firsthand. She saw the explosive Camillagate transcripts leak in 1993, watched Charles confess on television in 1994, and observed Diana's historic interview in 1995. She watched the divorce in 1996, and then she watched the aftermath of Paris while the palace debated lowering its flags. Anne has always guarded her emotions with absolute discipline, but those closest to her report a subtle shift after the coronation. It was not outward anger, but rather a quiet, cold calculation, a firm decision stored away for the perfect moment. This anticipated moment finally arrived in February of last year, initiated by a single, secretive communication. A senior palace official placed a telephone call that lasted exactly 9 minutes, and the sole focus was Camilla. According to inside sources, the conclusion of this brief exchange marked a permanent pivot in the royal power structure. Now, as we examine these allegations, a measure of journalistic honesty is required. Much of royal reporting relies on rumors that eventually harden into accepted truth. It is impossible to independently verify every whispered conversation behind closed doors. The palace itself will remain resolutely silent, maintaining their traditional stance of never confirming or denying any internal affairs. Instead of relying on rumors, observers can focus on the undeniable pattern of public actions over the past few years, which reveals a highly calculated strategy. Within this drama lies a crucial piece of personal history that mainstream media frequently overlooks, yet it is impossible to comprehend Anne's current stance without it. Back in the early 1970s, long before Camilla married, Princess Anne was romantically involved with a cavalry officer named Andrew Parker Bowles. The newspapers of the era documented this relationship extensively. Ironically, the woman who later married Andrew was Camilla. For 50 years, Anne has carried the memory of that chapter, maintaining the same unflinching, disciplined silence that defines her character. Those who know the Princess Royal best insist she did not view this past relationship as heartbreak, but rather as valuable intelligence. It was key information regarding the character of Camilla, illustrating her willingness to step into spaces belonging to others. Consequently, when Diana entered the royal family in 1981, Anne immediately recognized the cycle repeating itself. She had witnessed this behavior firsthand long before the global press focused on Charles and Diana's marriage. More than 3 decades later, Anne is the sole senior royal, possessing both the institutional memory of the crown and a deep personal motivation to act, pointing toward a hidden chamber that has entirely escaped public scrutiny. Deep within the walls of the Round Tower at Windsor Castle lies a restricted sanctuary known as the Royal Archives. This repository remains completely sealed against the public, camera crews, and independent historians. Protected by maximum security, its shelves hold the unedited paper trail of the British monarchy throughout the 20th century. This includes intimate letters, private journals, and secret memos written during the dark years when Charles and Diana's union was disintegrating. Princess Anne wields a level of security clearance that almost no one else can match. Inside sources whisper that she has been spending quiet hours in this vault, pulling files specifically from the 1980s and 90s. Her focus is not on the sanitized narrative that the public has consumed for decades, but on the cold, documented truth. She is dissecting the internal politics of the palace, uncovering who held critical knowledge of the affair. These files reveal who facilitated the relationship, how Diana's pleas were brushed aside by the household, and which courtiers protected specific lies at the expense of others. Behind palace walls, staff members have begun referring to this quiet operation as the Windsor Reset. Whether this is an official title or hallway gossip, the restructuring it represents is real. Anne has no intention of writing a book or calling a press conference. Instead, she is quietly securing a much more permanent outcome. Ultimately, the historical record will be permanently reshaped by the one royal who holds the keys to the archival vaults. If Princess Anne completes this project, Camilla's legacy within the monarchy will not be written by her own allies. It will be authored by Diana's sister-in-law. Simultaneously, Prince William has been opening a completely different front in this campaign. While many dismiss the Duchy of Cornwall as minor real estate, we must understand its power to comprehend the stakes involved. This is far from a ceremonial title. This private empire has existed since 1337, encompassing vast tracts of high-value farmland spread across 11 distinct counties. This massive portfolio includes the entire Isles of Scilly, commercial buildings in central London, holiday cottages, mineral rights, and an investment fund that has grown for nearly 700 years. In 2025 alone, this estate generated roughly £30 million in revenue. Every single pound of that fortune, along with all property and staffing decisions, remains under the control of Prince William. Following the death of Queen Elizabeth in September of 2022, ownership passed automatically from Charles to his eldest son. The action William took next was described by observers as incredibly swift and surgical. Annabel Elliot, the sister of Camilla, suddenly vanished from the official payroll. For nearly 20 years, Annabel had been employed as the lead interior designer across duchy estates during Charles's tenure. She earned a comfortable income, with annual fees ranging between £19,000 and £82,000. Suddenly, her name was omitted from the financial ledgers. There were no explanations, no press releases, and no public feuds. She was simply removed. The replacements brought in by the Prince of Wales were not corporate hires. Instead, he selected loyalists from his own social circle, trusted friends and godparents to his children. This calculated house cleaning caught the attention of royal experts who recognized a silent, powerful declaration of war. These maneuvers are far from impulsive acts of emotional retaliation. Those closest to the future king describe him as a disciplined strategist who excels at playing the long game, demonstrating a rare patience to wait years for the perfect opportunity before revealing his hand. If you and I examine the timeline of his decisions, this quiet, calculated pattern becomes undeniable. In 2025, King Charles signed documents transferring the coveted power of granting royal warrants to both William and Catherine. These prestigious warrants represent the ultimate endorsement the crown can bestow upon brands, signaling royal alignment and favor to the global public. Throughout history, sovereigns have guarded this endorsement with intense scrutiny. Granting this authority to William and Catherine while the reigning monarch is still alive served as a striking public statement regarding the shift in the crown's center of gravity. To seasoned palace courtiers, this move was incredibly stark. Immediately afterward, a systematic redistribution of royal patronages began to unfold. Following Queen Elizabeth's passing in 2022, hundreds of her charitable links required reassignment. Sources indicate that several high-profile patronages originally slated for Camilla were quietly handed to others. There was no press release, only a final list where her name was notably absent. Let us look closely at how the walls began to close in on the Parker Bowles family. It started with subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in who got invited where. Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's own son, suddenly found himself left off guest lists that used to be a given. By the time the summer of 2024 came to a close, His usual invitations to exclusive Balmoral gatherings had quietly dried up. Even Annabel Elliot, already stripped of her duchy payroll status, stopped showing her face at seasonal functions she had attended for nearly 20 years. The vast social network Camilla had spent 2 decades building was suddenly looking incredibly thin. And then, the Sarah Ferguson scandal broke, adding a dangerous new layer to the palace chess game. Everything escalated when Ferguson's name surfaced in the notorious Epstein files released by the United States Department of Justice. While there is absolutely no proof of criminal behavior on her part, the paper trail of their association is undeniable. Thanks to Prince Andrew's toxic legacy, any ties to that corner of the family became radioactive for anyone trying to survive in the modern palace. Insiders claim William laid down a brutal ultimatum directly to Camilla, telling her to cut ties with Ferguson permanently or face the consequences, but Camilla flatly refused. Ferguson was a loyal friend from her life before the palace, and turning her back under pressure felt like letting others dictate her life. Whether that confrontation happened exactly this way is hard to say. No one can verify if that conversation went down exactly as rumored, but the resulting standoff is very real. It continues to simmer behind closed doors, draining Camilla's political capital inside the palace with every passing week. But it was a sudden move just before Christmas in 2024 that really made royal watchers stop and take notice. Without warning, Ray Mill House in Wiltshire was quietly put up for sale. This was not just any estate, it was Camilla's private sanctuary, the country home and gardens she once called her ultimate therapy. She had owned it long before marrying Charles, yet, with zero public announcement, the house hit the market and sold in less than 48 hours, not because the price was slashed, but because she wanted out. The rush to sell was entirely because Camilla demanded a rapid exit from the property. In the high-stakes world of the British elite, people do not just dump their personal sanctuaries on a whim. This was a private haven that belonged completely to her, a place that existed long before her royal title, her public duties, and the exhausting machinery of palace life. You do not abandon a place like that unless your vision of the future has completely fractured. Those in the know say Camilla kept Ray Mill House as a critical safety net, the one address that would remain hers no matter how bad things got. Selling it so quickly suggests she did the brutal math on her future and realized cash was far more valuable than a country escape. Let us pause for a moment and look at the cold, hard numbers together. Today, Camilla enjoys free reign over Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, Sandringham, and Balmoral. But when King Charles passes, 3 of those 4 legendary estates will transfer directly to Prince William. The reality of Camilla's inheritance is Clarence House, valued at around £72 million, and Highgrove, worth about $39 million. While that sounds massive to everyday citizens, it represents a devastating step down from her current status. She would go from reigning queen consort to a quiet widow, living in homes controlled by a stepson who watched her tear his mother's life apart. Selling her sanctuary in 48 hours shows she sees the writing on the wall. There is no doubt that King Charles is fully aware of the quiet war playing out under his nose. No matter where your loyalties lie in this royal drama, this is the most heartbreaking aspect of the situation. He knows precisely what his sister, Princess Anne, is planning, and he knows exactly what his son, William, is setting in motion. Insiders reveal that Charles made a tense phone call to Anne last February that dragged on for 40 minutes, only to end in total gridlock. At 76 years old, and having battled a cancer diagnosis since early 2024, he has managed to keep up appearances with immense discipline. But maintaining that public facade across 2 agonizing years has taken a heavy toll on the aging monarch. However, pure duty cannot manufacture physical stamina, and waging a 2-front battle for Camilla is simply beyond the king's dwindling strength. This is especially true since the public still links Camilla to the tragedy of Princess Diana. Charles allegedly confessed to a close advisor that while he understands the moves being made, he cannot bring himself to blame William or Anne. The harsh truth is that he has no leverage to stop them. This passive stance is the one obstacle Camilla cannot overcome. Without the king's active intervention, she has no shield against the rising tide. No one else in the palace possesses the power and the will to challenge the future king and his aunt. Left completely exposed, Camilla is watching her own legacy be systematically dismantled. This takedown is not happening through loud shouting matches, but through 100 silent, calculated maneuvers. Each individual slight can be easily excused or explained away, yet together they form an undeniable trap that Camilla can see but cannot openly call out. Behind closed doors, she has demanded answers from top palace staffers about these strange shifts. She has questioned the sudden reshuffling of her royal patronages and asked why her name was left off major guest lists, but the feedback she gets is always wrapped in cold, procedural bureaucracy. There is no room for her to fight back because no one is officially declaring war, leaving her to shadowbox against polite excuses and corporate red tape. She is trapped in a hostile environment where pointing out the obvious would make her sound completely unhinged. This silent warfare exerts a psychological pressure that is incredibly hard to bear. You cannot take a subtle pattern to court, nor can you file an official grievance over a cold shoulder. It is impossible to demand a confrontation when your opponent's entire strategy is built on plausible deniability. Prince William has never uttered a single hostile word about Camilla in public, nor has he leaked anonymous attacks. Instead, his quiet, relentless actions over the last 3 years have spoken volumes. The palace machine, sensing the shifting winds under the future king, has simply aligned itself with his silent decree. At this point, you and I need to look closely at Prince William, because the depth of his personal pain is often completely overlooked. Think back to that haunting image from September of 1997, where 2 young brothers walked behind their mother's coffin through the quiet streets of London. William was just 15 years old, and Harry was 12. The only sound was the heavy thud of horses' hooves on the pavement. While William has never written a memoir or detailed that trauma in public, he has shared fragmented memories with close friends over the years. According to those who know him best, he once admitted that the most agonizing part of that walk had nothing to do with the coffin itself. The true horror lay in his awareness that the woman who had caused his mother so much misery was still very much in the picture, climbing her way into his father's life. This painful conversation allegedly took place in 1998, when William was only 16. Years earlier, around the age of 13, another telling incident occurred within the palace walls. A former staffer recalled how the young prince once asked his tutor to define the word adultery after spotting it in a tabloid headline. The tutor, frozen in discomfort, remained silent. We can never know if that exact exchange happened as described, but it rings devastatingly true when you consider the toxic environment that surrounded him. Imagine growing up while your parents' marriage collapses on the front page of every tabloid, with your mother's deep anguish broadcast to the entire nation. William was old enough to read those headlines, and he was certainly old enough to understand the gravity of the name splashed across them. Today, that young boy is a 43-year-old man who holds the keys to the most lucrative royal estates in the country. He dictates the payroll, distributes patronages, and decides who is welcome at Balmoral. In over 25 years, he has never given the slightest hint that he has forgiven the past. Despite Camilla winning the ultimate crown, the cold reality of her situation is now setting in. On paper, Camilla achieved everything she set out to do, securing the marriage, the title, and the crown. We all saw her stand in Westminster Abbey in May of 2023, wearing the late Queen's crown jewels, under the glare of 1,000 cameras. By any traditional metric, her public rehabilitation was absolute. The public had settled, and the monarchy had embraced her. Yet, you and I must realize that this battle was never about conquering King Charles's heart. It was about competing with Princess Diana's shadow. And you simply cannot win a war against a ghost when Diana's son holds the purse strings, her family guards the history, and her memory still holds the nation's heart. Camilla may have won the visible battle for the crown, but she is quietly losing the silent war that was never announced. Today, you and I are going to pull back the curtain on this hidden conflict. When a senior household figure asked if the timing of this offensive was too harsh, Princess Anne reportedly shot back with just 5 words. Diana deserves the truth now. Whether those exact words were spoken, or if it is simply palace shorthand, the underlying meaning remains unchanged. Anne is not protecting Camilla anymore. She is doing the exact opposite. When the Princess Royal withdraws her shield, everyone in the palace reads the signal. Tragically, Diana never saw this day. She only got a cold Paris tunnel, 2 motherless boys, and a royal family that hesitated to lower its flags. But what is unfolding deep inside the palace walls right now is a reality Princess Diana never lived to witness. Her eldest son, Prince William, and her sister-in-law, Princess Anne, are moving in lockstep, quietly dismantling everything Camilla spent 30 years carefully constructing. They're not using loud confrontations or dramatic public statements, but rather patience, proximity, and the slow, heavy pressure of those who control the narrative. This is an institutional shift designed to rewrite history. While Camilla ultimately got the marriage, Diana is the one who keeps the legacy. And today, within Buckingham Palace, those two facts can no longer coexist in peace.